How not to get new clients, lose existing clients, and get 2 weeks paid time off, posted by Edek FC. Some 10 years ago, I was switching jobs after over 7 years at my previous one. I decided I was done with printers and stuff and wanted something new, and I found this company that was supplying CCTV, security, and fire alarms. The company had branches in a few bigger cities in my country. The pay was worse than my previous job, but I figured it's not that bad, and I really wanted to switch jobs. I was contracted for 3 months of a trial period, and it's common practice in my country. It's a type of short-term job employment contract, usually 1 to 3 months, that legally has the same terms as a regular job contract, with often some limits on company benefits like private Medicare or gym pass or whatever, and after which we'll decide if I'm staying or not. My boss was the regional manager, and I've had a coworker who had been hired earlier. Our branch was open for a few months at this point. Now, it's important to note that the company only dealt in business to business, no retail, and we didn't even have a physical printer. Now that is mandatory if you want to do retail sales. So our clients were all companies, big and small, and per company policy, we specialized in electrical equipment installation. Now in my country, all businesses are registered in a central database, and the type of stuff done is one of the required stuff from a vast catalog of what can be done commercially. This is tied to the pricing levels. You run an electric company, you get better prices than a flower company. You get the idea. The company had a CRM, customer relationship management software, in which we were required to note every interaction with our clients. When I asked our regional manager about how it should be kept, a conversation followed. I said, "So I need to note only sales or some other stuff as well?" He said, "Everything, each call, each visit, each sale, and you need to schedule the client's next visit or call. You're to contact each of your clients at least once a week to keep up relations and note everything in the CRM. It's connected to the phone billing, so we know when you've made the calls or not." "Okay, so I'm supposed to call each client at least once a week for a chat?" "Yes, and make notes in the CRM." "You realize calling that often will annoy most clients." "This is a company's policy. We want our clients to be cared about, and it's your job to do it." I think everyone knows this is not how you build a positive relationship with your potential clients. We're all sick and tired of banks or phone companies calling with yet another great offer. But fine, it's not my place to argue with company policy. I split with my coworkers the clients that we had registered, found a few more potential contacts on the internet, and for the next few weeks, I'd call each of my clients. First, to introduce myself as their new sales guy, and asked if I can contact them once in a while to check up on things. I didn't note how often I'd check up on things, and after a few weekly calls, some clients stopped answering. Others blocked me, and I noticed I get straight to voicemail. That's pretty obvious. And some got annoyed with the pestering and voiced that with all the manner of euphemisms. My favorite was, "I kindly ask you to take up a journey to the land of up your butt and to the left," or straight up insults about wasting their time, and if they want something from me, they'll get back to me. I obviously noted every call in the CRM as explicitly instructed, but just in case someone actually read it, I refrained from citing insults and just went with "client angry about too frequent contacts, next contact on this date," and that was always in 1 week's time. All this didn't win me any favors with the client base, with one exception, but it hardly made a difference. Because we managed to antagonize most of our current and potential clients, we obviously didn't get much sales done, so we weren't allowed to keep much wares on our local stock. This meant that if someone would actually stumble into our store, the shelves would mostly be empty, to the point that putting together a small CCTV setup would be impossible, because we'd have like 1 DVR, 2 cameras of the same type, and 1 hard drive for the DVR. By that point, we'd get resupplied twice a week, so if the client ordered something on Thursday, the order would arrive on the next Tuesday afternoon at the earliest. This was often unacceptable, so clients would scrap the order. We did some business from time to time, but I'm pretty sure our branch was not making enough to even sustain itself, not to mention making a profit for the company. After about 7 to 8 weeks, I was dialing one of my clients again to check up if he doesn't need anything. Let's call him Red. I was about to hang up with no answer when he did pick it up. I said, "Hi, this is Ed from Company X. Can I take a moment?" At this point, he furiously interrupted me, yelling, "Are you freaking serious? I nearly fell off the ladder thinking it's something important, and it's you again? Didn't I freaking tell you not to bother me again? Are you freaking stupid?" This rant went on for a while. The guy was really creative when it comes to various combinations of insults, something that I think is impossible in the English language. When he finally made a long enough pause for me to chime in, I went with my, at this point, usual explanation. "I'm sorry you find these calls disturbing, but it's our company's policy to keep a close contact with our best clients." Red never actually bought anything. He said, "I don't give a crap about your company's policy. Get me your supervisor." I said, "Yes, sir." I happily gave him my boss's rank, name, and phone number. He paused for a moment, I'm guessing to note the info that I've given him, and then he hung up without a word. I dutifully noted the conversation in the CRM, noting that client angry, requested contact to supervisor, complied. After about half an hour, my regional manager called me. He said, "Did you call Red today?" "I did, like I do on a weekly basis per instructions." "Okay, don't call him again." I'm sure Red gave him a piece of his mind about the company policy. Next week, the one guy that didn't mind my calls strolls into the store and from the door asks, "Hey, I hear you're closing up shop?" I look at my coworker with surprised expressions. She mirrors it. We asked him where he heard about it, and he answered vaguely, "That's the word around town." We told him that we don't know anything about it. He ordered some basic stuff we usually don't have on hand, and he left. When I put out the order to arrive in the next shipment, I got a call from the HQ warehouse. "Hi, did you order X and Y?" "Yeah, I did. Is there a problem?" "Yeah, kinda. All your deliveries are on hold and we can't ship anything to you." I put the two and two together, thanked him for the info, hung up, and shared the revelation with my coworker. She contacted the regional manager to ask about it, and he claimed that it must be some kind of mistake and not to worry. The same week, on Friday, the regional manager arrived at 9 o'clock. We opened the store at 8 and went straight to the point. "Here are the papers to relieve you from work as of Monday. Today, we pack all of the stock and equipment, and at 1400 hours, there'll be a truck to pick up everything, and the store is done." Now, work relief is a document that basically tells you that you're still employed as per contract, keeping the pay and Social Security, but you don't have to actually work, and it doesn't deplete your annual batch of vacation days. Now, we get 20 to 26 paid vacation days a year. It's used usually when an employee needs to be terminated with notice period, but you don't want to keep him around for the time remaining. In my case, I was 2 weeks until my trial period was to end, so I got the remainder of that time off with pay, and the contract would just end. My coworker had 2 weeks notice period per her contract. I listed the brief time spent at this company as branch closing specialist on my LinkedIn. I think it's more accurate than the technical and sales specialist that I actually had on my contract. The company is still there, but scaled back on its branches, and as far as I know, they loosened up their policy a bit. I went on to switch industries once more to cable TV, but got back to CCTV and stuff for the next company, where I've spent 4 years, where I had a lot of regular clients and didn't call any of them once without a specific reason. You get angry and belittle me when I want to follow the instruction manual on your brand new piece of kit? Enjoy your brand new Rusty Wheel Slicer, posted by Petty Rusty. It's been years, but I'm still worried that this person is going to hunt me down in my sleep, hence the throwaway. I used to work at a deli shop / cafe place just to make ends meet while I went to university, and the owner of that place was a real piece of work. If you got on her bad side, you were on the crap list, and she would be both openly and passively aggressive with the general vibe that you were an incompetent idiot no matter what you did. I heard that woman scream at a 15-year-old on her second day because she had mixed up coffee and teacups, which differed in size by about an ounce, just to give you an idea of her personality. After this whole experience, my dad told me that, as a general hint, it may be good to be suspicious if a workplace hires exclusively teen girls with no experience because they're very unlikely to recognize crappy workplace treatment. There were 2 people in this place who didn't take her crap. Me, a mid-20s recovering addict who's seen way worse, and a 45-year-old Iranian man who told her that she could go freak herself when she berated him for not being willing to come in early to his 11-hour shift to prep ingredients. Off the clock, of course. I like that dude. With the stage set, onto the malicious compliance. when I started, this place desperately needed a new wheel meat slicer. The one they made had a constant screeching noise and drove everyone crazy. About a month and a half into my employment, they got one. Industrial grade, cost $5,000, both looked and worked accordingly. Amazing piece of kit. As we were all celebrating and unpacking it, I flipped through the instruction booklet to look up how it works and specifically how to clean it, as there were quite a few parts. Manual says to clean everything detachable thoroughly, but that the wheel itself should be cleaned by letting it run on very low speed with safety precautions and using a cloth and alcohol-based cleaning agent on the exposed part. There were some pictures and detailed instructions on how to do this, and it explicitly stated not to take the whole wheel off and deep clean it, as this would remove the wheel lubricant and anti-corrosive agent, and it would risk damage to the machine, and to especially not let water or any cleaning agents get into the machine without making sure to thoroughly replace any lubricant. I was working the evening shift, so 99% of the time it was up to me to clean it. The instructions is how I clean the machine because I trust the designer to know how to clean it. Or I do for about 2 days until my boss sees me, asks what the heck I'm doing and why I'm not taking the wheel off to clean it. She berates me about food safety and hygiene standards, telling me how disgusting I am for doing it this way. I stand my ground and inform her that I do it this way because of the instructions, that I'm following the manual, and explain the reason behind it. If we scrub it down, especially the inner part, the grease will go away a lot faster and will risk damage to the machine. She basically tells me to shove it and do it her way. Now, I'm not going to ruin a $5,000 thing because one woman doesn't understand how lubrication works, but the very next day, my manager sees me clean the machine and gives me an extremely condescending talk down on how, quote, "this isn't how we approach hygiene," and how, "boss told me you don't seem to understand food safety." My explanation falls on deaf ears again, and I'm also informed not only am I expected to take the wheel off and scrub it at the end of the day, but after every use. Boss also wants me to make sure that I spray off the inside section to ensure there's no bacteria in there, with some hints that there'd apparently been a whole colony of life growing in there due to my 2-day negligence. She wants me to spray soap and water mixture into the cogs of a machine that they just bought. The blade is stainless steel, but the frickin' cogs aren't. Freaking fine. If that's what you want me to do, that's what I'll do. Every day, 5 times a day, I take the freaking machine apart and I scrub it down. Every day I see that lubrication disappear more and more, and after a week, it's all gone, eventually becoming replaced by growing patches of rust. I feel bad for the machine, but I do as I've been told. I only work 6 days a week, so every day I come in after my break thinking that surely yesterday my manager would have reacted. Nope. She takes it apart just like I do, clean it like I do, and doesn't seem to think twice about the fact that this brand new machine is rusting apart in front of our eyes. In fact, she goes the extra mile and also scrubs the cog itself, which is probably why a year or so worth of lubricant disappeared in 1 week. The thing about rusty machinery is that it usually works up until a certain point, but once it reaches that point, there's no going back. One day, I turn it on, and it makes a screeching noise that I can only imagine came from the soul of this bit of kit, wondering why God has forsaken it, and it's like all the clocks. Stop. My coworker in the pastry section comes over to ask me what the heck that noise is. My boss and manager come into the room with the same question, and I just shrug and slice my salami. Boss tells her co-owner to go get some lubrication for the gears. And after a minute, he puts some freaking spray on oil lube in front of me and tells me to lube the gears up. I ask him where the lithium lubricant paste is, since according to the instructions, that's what you need, and he seems, flabbergasted that putting something made for hinges and ball bearings isn't appropriate for a meat slicer. 2 days and some tinnitus later, he's acquired some grease and then proceeds to be stumped when I let him know that I'm not going to stop doing my regular job to spend 30 minutes greasing up this machine unless someone else takes over my station or they pay me overtime. My boss is, meanwhile, demanding to know why I haven't told them we needed to stock up on lithium grease, which I don't even bother to respond to. I make sandwiches, I'm not your mechanic. I left that job a few weeks later, and when I did, the machine was still crying the song of its ancestors every time we turned it on. And we were still scrubbing it down from the inside out daily, of course. I have since then gotten a sneaking suspicion that I know what happened to its predecessor, and me and my dad, who is actually a mechanic, still laugh about it sometimes. My boss did ask, rhetorically, at one point, how the heck the machine got to that stage so fast. I answered that it's probably because we've been scrubbing the lubrication and corrosion protection off several times a day, and I take great pleasure in the memory that she completely ignored me. It's the only time while I was there that she didn't snap back at me. And I like to think that she remembered back to when I explicitly told her that if we clean this thing in that way, this is exactly what would happen. Overall, I don't think a $5,000 machine would make or break anything, but holy crap did that make me feel good. Crappy bosses mess around and find out, posted by Onaplinth. I had a job working warehouse and delivery for a store. The entire corporate structure was built on treating the people below you like crap, and that was passed down through every level. Managers would just bark orders and chew you out for any reason they could think of. They paid about 25 cents over minimum wage, and the bosses drove BMWs and Mercedes. The big boss lived in an $8 million house. Our store was the freight hub for 4 others in this little chain, so we got to know the drivers from the other stores well, as they were always coming to load freight or to drop stuff off. One day, we're sitting with 2 drivers from another store, and Buddy remarks that he and his partner are working over 60 hours a week. I say, well, he must be doing okay with all that overtime pay. He says they're not getting overtime, just paid a straight time rate. I ask him if he signed an averaging agreement, and he says no. He shows me his pay stub, and there it is. His partner comes back and confirms all this, and they've been doing it for months. He'd asked his manager about overtime and been told that straight pay was just the way it worked. I tell them that's illegal and urge them to take it to the labor relations. They're both reluctant to rock the boat, figuring they'll be fired. So I drop it. We never got any overtime. Our warehouse was busy, but our store wasn't. A couple months later, they're in again, and Buddy's partner tells us that he and his girlfriend are moving back east, and he's giving his notice. I tell him again to file a complaint, nothing to lose now, so he does. A few weeks go by, and when I come in one day, there are expensive boss cars parked all along the loading dock. My workmate says something big is going down. All the managers have been summoned and are inside with a bunch of people in suits. So we wander upstairs to see what's going on. The company bookkeeper had an office in our store and handled all the payroll. He was a Chinese immigrant, nice guy. The bosses were trying to pin this on him, saying he didn't speak English very well, which was true, and had obviously screwed everything up. Turns out he was a pretty cagey guy. He knew what they told him to do was illegal and was able to produce all the records of him telling them that and of them telling him to basically just shut up and do it. He hands it all over and quits. I see Buddy with a new partner a few weeks later. He's got a pay stub for about 15 paychecks worth of earnings. Company got caught for all the overtime pay and a pretty substantial fine on top of that. Added bonus, the second in command had driven over a nail when he parked his silver BMW on the loading dock and had a flat when he came out of the store. He opened his trunk and called me over and said, "Change that for me." I told him, sorry, it's not my job, and if I hurt myself, my compensation claim would be denied. As he went in to call a tow truck, I stood on the loading dock and gazed upon all the havoc I had wrought, and my heart was glad. I got my boss arrested and bankrupted and tore down the store. This happened about 5 years ago in a small town. I do mean that it was a small town. There was a bar, a gas station, post office, a grocery store, and a stop sign. We didn't even get enough traffic for a light. I worked at that grocery store in the deli, and I hated it. The owner was a complete monster, and we butted heads constantly. Luckily, I worked under the deli manager, who wasn't a complete jerk. The owner would deny time off and make you work off vacation time before you took it. So, if you wanted to take 20 hours of vacation time, you had to find a way to work those 20 hours before you left, or it was unapproved and he could schedule you during that time. On the fateful day that started the drama, the deli manager was out, and I was the only person working in that department. I was also very, very sick. I had been out already for 2 days, and the owner informed me that if I didn't come in, I would be fired. So I dragged myself to work and set about slicing meat and cheese while taking breaks to throw up anything, including bile and water, that I might have in my stomach. I kept getting worse and worse and could barely see, but the owner refused to put me in a different department or let me go home. I'm not sure when it happened, since the rest of the story is secondhand and just a blur to me. I was found unconscious on the deli floor by a customer who had dialed 911. The owner tried to block the EMTs from reaching the deli while telling them that there was no need for them. I was loaded onto the stretcher and put into the back of the ambulance only for the owner to block them in. He wanted me to clock out before being taken to the hospital. Mr. Jerkface owner ended up getting arrested, and I got to spend 4 days in the hospital with norovirus. His actions led to health inspectors coming in who found a whole bunch of things wrong. He was storing frozen meat on the freezer floor next to cleaning supplies. The store got shut down and later demolished. The employees, myself included, had to sue him to get our final paychecks. He decided that it was our lack of responsibility that led to this, and therefore we should pay the massive fines. I was one of the oldest employees there at 20 years old, and most were high school kids. By the end of the year, the store was torn down and the owner bankrupt and in jail. I don't know how to explain the actions, how the boss thought that this was okay. How are you going to interfere with EMTs with a passed out employee unconscious on the floor with all these safety hazards and what have you done? Fired new boss Karen. She demands I do her job. Click the video on your screen so you find out what happens to her, and I'll see you there.